I used to love my job. I was a night guard at a wind farm. All I had to do was drive around a few times each night to check that nobody was messing with the big wind machines. I would read books and watch movies on a small DVD player to pass the time. The only thing that broke up my night was driving around to check things. I worked from 9 p.m. to 9 a.m. When I got there, I'd talk to the day guard. He'd tell me if anything happened during the day, usually just seeing some deer or maybe a bear. There were 12 big windmills spread out over 5 miles. They were all connected by a dirt road. When I first started, I would get out and check the locks on each windmill door. After 5 years, I just drove by and barely looked at them. Sometimes I'd still be watching my movie while driving. There wasn't much traffic on that dirt road. One evening I was running late. I rushed to work with something bothering me in the back of my mind. I made it just in time, got my report, and started my usual routine. My first drive around went fine. It was getting dark and storm clouds were building. I saw some turkeys cross the road, which meant a storm was coming. The drive around the 5-mile circle took about 30 minutes. I got back to the main building and started watching an action movie on my DVD player. I fell asleep and woke up when the movie credits were rolling. I remembered I had missed my second round, so I jumped in the car and drove off quickly. That's when I remembered what had been bothering me. The gas light was on. I had forgotten to fill up yesterday. I cursed myself but thought I had enough gas to make it through the night. My boss was strict and would sometimes show up for surprise visits. If he caught you leaving during your shift, you'd be fired. I didn't want to lose such an easy job, so I stayed even though I was worried about the gas. During my next movie, the sequel, I went for another round. It had started raining hard, making my windows fog up. The heater wasn't working well. By my 4th round, it was raining so hard I could barely see. The rain had made deep ruts in the road with big puddles everywhere. I was glad I was driving a Jeep. I got right in the middle of a huge puddle when my engine died. I tried starting it over and over, but it was no use. I was out of gas. I was stuck. I had to decide, stay in the car during the storm or walk back to the building. It would be 8 hours until the day shift came. With the heavy rain, walking back seemed impossible. I didn't want to run down my car battery, so I stopped watching movies. I just sat listening to the rain pound on the roof like someone dropping marbles from the sky. That's when my mind started playing tricks on me. I was whistling, badly, when I looked in my rearview mirror and thought I saw eyes looking back at me through the rear window. I spun around fast but nothing was there. I locked the doors just to be safe. My whistling got louder as I tried not to look in the mirror. But eventually I couldn't help it. I looked again. Nothing there. I laughed nervously at myself for being scared and leaned back. I don't remember falling asleep, but I woke up to total silence. No rain, no animals, no crickets, nothing. It was creepy. I rolled down my window a bit to listen. Still no sound, not even the whooshing of the windmill blades spinning. I looked at the nearest windmill and the blades weren't moving at all. It was weird for the wind to be so calm. I checked my watch. I'd been asleep for 4 hours. The storm clouds had moved away and the moon was out. It wasn't quite full but bright enough to light up the ground and make hundreds of shadows from the trees around me. It was a beautiful night in rural countryside. I started thinking about whether to stay or walk back. In less than 4 hours, the day shift would arrive. It would be easier to explain if I met him at the gate rather than him finding me stuck in the road. I decided to walk. I grabbed my flashlight from the glove box. I saw my handgun sitting next to it and thought about taking it, but decided not to. Most animals around here avoid people, and the others can be scared away by yelling. I locked the car and stepped out. My foot landed in a deep puddle, the water went past my ankle and filled my shoe. The puddle was about 12 feet across and went all around the car. I knew hopping wouldn't help, so I put my other foot down and waded through. I was at windmill number 5, which was the farthest from the gate, right in the middle. It didn't matter if I went forward or backward, so I decided to go forward. At first, the only sound was my wet shoes squishing. It was creepy having only silence and hundreds of tree shadows for company. I shined my flashlight in the trees and saw lots of eyes shining back at me, but they were all silent. It felt like they were sitting in church pews watching me walk down the aisle. The eyes were different sizes, some small, some quite large, but none of them made any sound. Were they really afraid of me? I stopped to rest, and that's when I heard it, a footstep behind me. Not a heavy thud, but a soft squish of grass under a big foot. I spun around and shined my light where I thought the sound came from, but saw nothing. Seeing nothing was maybe worse than seeing something. A deer, bear, or coyote I could deal with, scare it away or fight it off. But nothing just made my mind fill with horrible thoughts. The creepy silence continued as I walked faster without thinking about it. Even my squeaky shoes seemed louder now. I thought about cutting through the woods to save time, but in the dead of night with hours until dawn, I didn't want to risk it. I tried whistling a happy song to calm my nerves, but the echo came back twisted and scary, like a children's song in a horror movie. I stopped whistling quickly. I was halfway through the song when it died on my lips. The sudden silence brought me another footstep behind me. I spun around as fast as I could and shined my flashlight around. This time my mind wasn't scaring me with nothing. This time I saw eyes. They were large and red, but what scared me most was how high they were, about 8 feet off the ground. Whatever it was stood 40 or 50 yards away, hiding behind a tree. Those eyes will haunt me for the rest of my life. I didn't know how much longer that would be with such a huge creature clearly following me. I'd love to say I carefully thought about my options and came up with a smart plan. I didn't. I ran like the devil was chasing me. I was surprised I kept hold of my flashlight. I found speed I never knew I had. Desperation will do that. My mind raced faster than my feet, but couldn't find a solution. I could hear the footsteps behind me getting closer. It was going to catch me. Then I saw my salvation rising in front of me like a lighthouse, one of the wind turbines. I knew the code to get inside in case of emergency. I thought I couldn't run any faster, but hearing those massive footsteps behind me and seeing safety ahead, I felt like a cartoon character putting on a burst of speed. The sounds of huge feet were getting closer. It no longer cared about being quiet. I could hear it on the gravel road now. My curiosity wanted me to turn and see what was chasing me, but I forced myself to focus on what was ahead. Stumbling now would be deadly. The 400-foot-tall tower loomed in front of me. I pictured where the keypad was, knowing I had one chance to type the code before I died. As safety got closer, panic set in. I became obsessed with the idea that I'd be caught any second. I have no idea what made me do it other than pure terror, but I threw my flashlight backward. By some miracle, I heard a muffled thud and a slight groan. The sounds came from much closer than I wanted, but I still wouldn't look back. I reached the turbine door, punched in the code, and yanked it open. It was heavy and strained my arms. As soon as I got inside, I pulled the door shut. But just before it closed, massive fingers appeared in the doorway. I pulled with everything I had, feeling my muscles strain to the breaking point. The door kept closing and the giant fingers got slammed between the door and frame. They disappeared and I heard an inhuman howl from outside as I shut and locked the door. I collapsed on the floor, gasping for air. My mind kept replaying the image of those fingers appearing in the doorway. I could see clearly that the fingers were the size of sausages, covered in brown hair with claws sticking out. I lay there panting, looking for options but finding none. For now I felt safe, but how long would that last? How would anyone find me in here? Would they even look or think I was lost in the woods? And the biggest question, what the hell was that thing? I didn't want to guess because the possible answers were too scary, especially with whatever it was still outside nearby. Just as I started to calm down, there was pounding at the door. It echoed through the giant hollow tube that was now both my safety and my prison. I jumped up, not knowing what to do. My only way out led to the claws of a monster. I looked around for help but found none. I accepted that I would have to wait for my doom. I could see the door shake with every hit. I knew it was made of strong metal, but even metal breaks eventually. As I searched the small 10-foot room, my eyes were drawn upward. There was a ladder attached to the side that stretched up into what seemed like infinity. There were lights along the side every few feet, but that didn't help much. I thought about my choices: wait here for the door to break or climb an impossible climb straight up with no rest stops. If I climbed, it would be all or nothing. Stopping halfway up just meant I'd have to climb all the way back down to my hopeless situation. I had no idea if I was strong enough for such a climb, but another round of pounding at the door made up my mind. I stepped onto the ladder carefully, as if waiting for it to break under my weight. After a moment I stepped on the second rung, then the third. The fourth rung almost killed me. I slipped and fell back to the floor, landing in a puddle. This reminded me that my shoes were soaking wet. Even though there were grip pads on the rungs, I had to be extra careful and step on the arch of my foot, not the ball. I got up and checked for injuries. I was sure there'd be bruises if I survived, but other than that only my pride was hurt. The thumping on the door reminded me what was important. I stood and started up the ladder again, stepping with my arch this time. I started slowly, making sure every step was secure before moving to the next rung. Soon I gained confidence and moved a little faster. My breathing got heavy as the climb drained my energy. I regretted skipping dinner. I paused and hooked my arm into the ladder to keep from falling while I caught my breath. That's when I made two mistakes, looking up and looking down. When I looked up, it seemed like I was no closer to the top than when I started. When I looked down, I saw I'd climbed high enough that falling would kill me. There was one other thing I saw when I looked down that made me want to cry: safety harnesses hanging on the wall. There was a metal cable that ran beside the ladder. For a moment I thought about climbing back down to get one, but I realized I might not have the energy to climb back up. The rest of the climb seemed to take forever. My breaks became more frequent and longer each time. My feet were screaming for rest. I was nearly exhausted when I looked up and saw the top of the ladder. The excitement carried me the rest of the way. I climbed off the ladder and collapsed on the metal platform. I lay there for what felt like forever until I got my strength back. I went through the door into the generator room. It was cramped because of all the machinery. There was a small walkway beside the generator and a hatch to go outside. I found a safety harness, put it on, and attached the line to a hook. When I opened the hatch, dawn had broken and the world was lit with brilliant orange early morning light. The beauty amazed me so much that I didn't notice the wind that had been calm after the storm was now hitting me hard, threatening to knock me off my feet. I stumbled, feeling grateful for the safety line. I watched as one of the massive blades passed by just a few feet away. My only reason to take this risk was to look down and see if my pursuer had given up and left. I slowly looked over the side, fighting the dizziness from the scary height. I looked around at the tiny trees below and didn't see anything strange. I was about to go back inside when movement caught my eye. It was the creature. It had come around from the other side of the base of the turbine. I was amazed at how small it looked from up here, but it still left me with the problem of how to escape. I went back inside and looked around for an answer. After a quick search, I found a radio among the controls on the wall. I pressed a button and an alarm went off. I pressed it again to turn it off. I tried another button and heard static. "Hello, hello, can anyone hear me?" I said into the microphone. I tried again, still getting static. On the third try, my boss answered. "What the hell are you doing in one of the units?" It was an emergency. This was the only way I could contact someone. What was the emergency? I'd rather not say on the radio. "Can you come get me?" "What unit are you in?" "Number 6. "It'll be a while." "How long?" "When I get there," he grumbled. The line went back to static. I felt some relief knowing at least someone knew where I was and was coming eventually. Out of curiosity, I climbed back outside and leaned over to check on the creature. My blood turned to ice from what I saw. The creature was looking up at me. It must have heard the alarm. Then it did something that would haunt my nightmares for years. It started climbing the outside of the wind turbine. I couldn't look away from the horrible sight. I kept hoping it would lose its grip and fall, but it didn't. It got closer and closer. When it was about halfway up, my mind woke up to the danger and sent my body into action. I rushed back inside and closed the hatch. I unfastened the safety line and headed back to the main ladder. Going down the ladder took much less time than going up. Several times I nearly slipped in my hurry, which would have meant falling to my death. Eventually I made it down. As I caught my breath, I heard the top of the turbine being attacked. The banging echoed down the tube, making it sound even louder. I opened the door as quietly as possible, hoping the noise above would cover my exit. As I did, a few brown hairs fell to the floor. I picked them up and put them in my pocket. As I slowly opened the door, it made a slight creak. Suddenly the noise above me stopped. My heart jumped into my throat. I stopped breathing. My mind showed me unhelpful images of the creature jumping down and tearing me apart. As I stood still as a statue, I smelled smoke. I looked up and saw black clouds flowing from the turbine. I ran as fast as I could back towards my jeep. I heard a roar behind me but refused to look. I nearly ran into my boss's car as he turned the corner. "What the hell?" he said, getting out. "Look, look," I said, pointing at the turbine. "I see." "What the hell did you do?" "No, no, look," I said, pointing at the black smoke. "What am I supposed to see other than millions of dollars going up in smoke?" I stopped and looked at the burning machine, but there was no creature there. I jumped in the car and slammed my door. "Look, can we go please?" He just stared at me, then got in the car and drove back to the main building. The whole time I kept looking behind us. He parked in front of the building and looked at me. "You're going to have to answer some questions." "I know. Would someone please go get my car?" I ran out of gas. That's why I was in the turbine. "Why didn't you just wait in the car?" he asked. I opened my mouth to answer, then realized what I was about to say and stopped. "All right," he said, getting out. "I'll send someone for the car." I followed him inside and lay on the couch in the break room. A little while later, a coworker woke me. "He has a key to your car. It's parked out front and the boss wants to see you," he said. I took the keys and stood. I looked toward the boss's office, then looked toward the exit. It only took a moment to decide. I turned left and walked out that door. I never returned. But the memory of that night has never left me and never will. The next day I read in the paper about the turbine fire and how they found a bear carcass that must have gotten trapped in the fire. But I knew better. I knew the company would come after me for destroying their expensive turbine. I also knew if I told the truth, they'd take me away to a mental hospital. Either way, I was about to disappear and my story would never be told. I found a group that studied unexplained things. I walked into their office with a bag in my pocket that had 3 brown hairs in it. I knew they'd want to hear my story.